So now let's build in our quantity increase and decrease feature. So looking at the final product, what we want to be able to do is have these arrows that are able to increase the quantity of an item or decrease the item. And we're able to do this because the right arrow fires our add item action that we've already created before, but also this new remove item action that's going to be very similar. Now, alternatively, one thing we have to consider when building these features is what is the full functionality. So one case might be what happens if we're on the last quantity and then we hit decrease again. Well, we see that actually removes the item. So we have to consider that into the way that we build this feature, because we want to be able to scope out everything that we need before we start building it. Now, we know that we need to add in these arrows to our checkout item component, and we also know that we need, at the very least, one more new cart action for remove item. So let's start building this out. The first thing we have to do is add these arrows to our component. So let's go into our code and let's modify our checkout item component. So the first thing we have to do is add the arrows in. And they're actually going to be using these Unicode 8 wingdings, just like the X that we have for our remove button, except we'll use a leftward and a rightward facing arrow. And they're going to be in divs with the class name of arrow. Oops. Got to make sure to keep them open. Let's copy this and paste this down. And the wingding code that we're going to use is going to start with ampersand hashtag, and it's 10094 semicolon. So this one is our leftward facing arrow. And now the rightward facing one is just one number increased. So it's going to be ampersand hashtag 10095 semicolon. And now if we save, we also need to wrap our quantity in a span. And the span will have the class name of value. And the reason we want to add these actual elements is so that we can apply better styling to it. Because right now, if we look at our application, we'll see that if we add an item, that it's not styled yet. It's vertically aligned, which we don't want. So what we want to do inside of our style sheet for checkout item is change this quantity to have display flex, which will put them in that horizontal side-by-side alignment based on how much space there is. Now, inside of here, we want our arrow class names to have a cursor of pointer so that the user can tell that it's a clickable element. And then for our value, we want a margin 0, 10 pixels. So 0 on the top and bottom, 10 pixels on the left and right. And now if we check again, we see that it looks how we want it to. Okay, now let's actually bind the functionality that we want to our left and right click. Now we know that our right click already is using the add item action that we already have, so we don't need to build this one. But the remove item one seems like it's kind of daunting because not only does it have to decrease the quantity, but we also have to consider how to remove it. But we've already done that if you think about it with our remove action, right? We've done something very similar. So our code, much of it has already been something we've written before. It's just the composition is going to be a little different. But it'll be interesting because it's going to combine all of these concepts that we've already been tackling and learning. So let's go into our cart types to add a new action string type called remove item. And then let's go to our action creators for our cart actions. And let's make a new one called remove action. remove item. And it's going to be cart action types dot remove item. And the payload will still be the item, exactly like our add item. Now what we want to do is modify our reducer. So inside of our cart reducer, we are going to make another case right underneath our add item for cart action types dot remove item. And we're going to return an object, spread in the state, because we want all the properties, right, that aren't changing. But the ones that we do want to change is cart items. And we're going to write a new utility function that will return us the array with the modified cart item with the decreased quantity, or the removed item from our existing cart items if it was the last one. So let's go to our cart utils and write this function. So let's think about what we need to do. We need to first figure out if there's an existing cart item already inside of our cart items, which we know there must be because we're decreasing it, right? So we know there must already be one. And then what we want to do, we need to check if the quantity is 1 so that we can remove it. Otherwise, decrease the quantity. So it sounds like there's a lot, but it's actually quite similar to the code that we've already written. So let's get started. So we'll say remove item from cart is equal to this function. So we know that we need the cart items because we got to check the existing cart items to see if our cart item to remove is inside of it, right? We need that existing item. So this code here is going to be very similar. It's going to be cart items.find, and we're going to check, just like our add item to cart, if the cart item.id is equal to our cart item to removes ID. Now, if we have the existing cart item, what we're going to check is only if the quantity is equal to 1. So we're going to say if the existing cart item's quantity is equal to 1, then we want to filter it out just like we did when we ran our clear item code, right? Just like this filter. It's the exact same idea. We just want to remove it, and we want to keep all the ones where the cart items IDs don't match the one we're trying to remove, because that's what filter needs. We're going to say return cart items dot filter, where the ones of the cart item dot ID does not match our cart item to remove dot ID. Because we want to keep those ones, right? So just like before, filter keeps the values where the function returns true. So if the ID is not the one that we want to remove, then we want to keep them. If it does, right? If it is, then I want to remove that cart item. Now, alternatively, if the quantity is not 1, and we know there is the existing cart item, because there must be, right? What we're going to return is we're going to say cart items dot map, and very similar to this function, it's going to be cart item, where we are going to just say cart item dot ID is equal to cart item to remove dot ID, right? If it is the same one, we want to decrease the quantity. We're going to return a new object, spread in the cart items, right? All the properties, except we want the quantity to go to cart item quantity minus 1. Otherwise, what we want is to return just the cart item. And that's all there is to it. If the existing item's quantity is at 1, remove it. Otherwise, decrease the quantity, right? And keep every other cart item the exact same because they don't need to be modified. And now that we have this code, let's just bring this into our reducer. And we can just do state.cartItems and action.payload. And now we have our reducer set up. We have our action creator. Let's add this to our checkout item. Now, let's just bring in add item and remove item and modify our map dispatch to dispatch them. Add item goes to item, dispatch, add item, where the payload, whoops, cannot type, is our item. And similarly, remove item will dispatch our remove item, where the item is our payload. Now let's destructure them in and bind them to the on click. So on our leftward facing arrow, we want our remove item with our cart item. And then on our rightward facing arrow, we want add item with our cart item. And now, if we add some items, we'll see that we're able to increase on click of the smaller arrow, decrease, and remove. All our functionality is in. And by combining everything we've learned up until this point, we've built a pretty robust feature. So this is pretty cool. We've managed to actually do everything that we need for this item toggling. And it's just building upon all the same code and ideas that we've already explored so far. It was just a matter of putting it together and mentally figuring out what we needed to do in order for our feature to not only decrease the quantity, but also remove it from our cart items if it was the last quantity. While some of these features look kind of complex at first glance, if we just tackle it one step at a time and think about what it is that we need to do, we're able to accomplish and build them pretty easily. Now let's commit our code. And let's just say added, add item, and remove item functionality to checkout item component. And git push. Okay, now let's continue.